This Ridley-O is sponsored by Freaking.com. Buckminster Fuller, the famous 60s era philosopher and architect, was on to something when he said this, and I paraphrase, you don't change an existing paradigm by railing against it or opposing it. You change it by creating a different paradigm and replacing it, or a different system, or something along those lines. That's how you do it. So it's occurred to me that we probably do spend a little... I mean, it's very useful to rail against the government in a sense, because the main... Well, one of the three main limitations, I guess, on government action is outcry, and that's the thing that they look for. They want to make sure they're not triggering too much outcry, especially governments that have to face elections. So it's useful. Don't stop doing it just because Buckminster Fuller said opposing things didn't work that well. It has its place. But it would be nice if we could, as liberty activists in New Hampshire, if we could project some of the other options onto the public debate. And I wish to play my part in that process today. Actually, I already have, because I earlier today I called talk radio with one of these ideas. But anyway, it's important to show people that there are alternatives to the types of systems that we currently have. It's not the be-all, end-all to have a winner-take-all fight between the two most unpopular people in the country every 4 years. And we don't have to pick between that and chaos or anarchy or zero government or even tiny government. There are many other ways these kinds of things could be done. Many other ways governance could be done that would be more humane and more in line with what the people who live there want. Now, the alternate systems would not easily be imposed on an existing location. For instance, you wouldn't want to just replace the United States form of government across the entire United States and impose the new form of government on everyone. I think I'm okay with not doing that. People have gotten used to what they have, and they've learned how to deal with it, often through symptoms of Stockholm Syndrome. But the solution to that problem is for new systems to be experimented with in small areas, so small that everyone there has consented. So, for instance, everyone on the moon right now is okay with you changing the form of government on the moon. And there are, probably areas of New Hampshire, that are 10 square miles by 10 square miles in size, or maybe even larger, that have no one in them. So everyone's consented. You could try out a new system in a place like that. Except you can't, because every single square inch of the United States is ruled by the federal government. Any system you would be trying out would be overruled by the feds. And so it goes, essentially, for every square inch of habitable Earth on Earth. We're banned from trying these systems in any location because those systems would be overruled by whatever governance is already there. Nevertheless, here are some of the things that could be tried if such a place is ever carved out, or if people get to space and they're not under government control. Number 1, approval voting and or ranked choice. Now, this was the method of sort of leadership choosing or referenda that we used in the Free State Project back in 2003 when we voted on which state we wanted to move to. But, for instance, if you voted for New Hampshire, however, that wasn't the only vote you got. You actually got 10 votes for the 10 different competing states. So in my case, I voted for you would rank, you know, which one to put on top and which one on the bottom. So for me, the favorite was New Hampshire, so I put it on the top. And the place that I least wanted us to go to was Vermont, so I put that in the bottom. It was number 10. So it was like New Hampshire 1, Wyoming 2, Idaho 3, and so on all the way down. And that's how everyone got to vote. So it took into account more than just what's your favorite. It took into account what is your least favorite and what is something that you think is okay. So a voting system like that would not give you Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump to pick from because their negatives were so high. It would have thrown people like that out of the system almost. So that's one thing you could do that would make life dramatically better. But again, probably should not be imposed on an existing system. At least it shouldn't necessarily replace an existing system. It's kind of like trying to fix an aircraft while it's in flight, right? It is flying. However, there are ways that this can still be done without redoing everything. And in Maine, they are experimenting with ranked choice voting. I don't know how deep that experiment has gone. But if it were to go really deep and if it were done across Maine society or Maine civic society, it could have a decisive effect on the state, making it dramatically better. Another option for governance is a thing called the 2A system. This was something that Mike Fisher introduced me to in 2005. Fisher, as you might remember, we call him the outlaw manicurist. He did illegal manicures in front of the Board of Barbering office and promised he would continue doing them until arrested. So they had the police come out and cuff him up. So he thought that would be a good way to do sort of a government. And this is something that has been experimented with in real life, but not recently. You'd have to go back to medieval Iceland to see it in use. Again, this is not because it's a bad system, but because it's banned everywhere, in a sense, unless it operates under the umbrella of an existing government, which defeats the whole purpose of experimenting with it. But anyway, a 2A is a system in which you vote for, you would say you vote for the leader, and the person you vote for as leader becomes your leader. And anyone who votes for a different leader gets that different leader. And so you wind up with different factions, and they did wind up with different factions in Iceland. No one person above them all. I don't know that much about how well or badly it worked out, but my understanding is it was fairly successful for about 300 years. Now, it's pretty scary to say to someone, why don't we live under a medieval system? That's not going to fly with most people. But if you think about it, the Americans, to a large extent, were just rebirthing the Greek and Roman systems, bits and pieces of each. And, with some exceptions, like Holland, I guess, and Switzerland, they did have to kind of go pretty far back in history to find examples of what they wanted to do. They went back further than the Middle Ages. So, maybe it would be nice on an asteroid or an orbital habitat or something like that to experiment with this kind of thing. In a place where everyone who arrives agrees to it before they get there. We're going to experiment with this particular system that, the arrivals like or want to participate in experimenting with. Let's just hope that a government doesn't start dominating every last area that you and your space colony might be able to reach with one of their hideous existing nation-state systems. Option 3, the Elon Musk system. This is not the one that he uses at his corporation. I think he has a fairly standard corporate hierarchy, but he's suggesting that for early space colonies, well, I hope I'm not misrepresenting his idea, but I think his idea is basically a mix of direct democracy along the lines of Switzerland with something else that's really important, and that is automatically expiring laws. You can't make a law that just continues on into the future until it's repealed. That would not be allowed in his suggested society. And that one minor change, seemingly minor, it's a simple change, that could do it. That could give you a working, relatively free society. Good enough for libertarians. Now, this solution I like, especially because although direct democracy, it would be difficult to impose a new direct democracy system on New Hampshire. You would not want to do that. You don't, if it works, don't fix it, right? It may work badly, but it functions, right? We don't have fighting in the streets in New Hampshire. So, what could be done in New Hampshire is to just have that one change, that all laws have to have an expiration date, 5 years or 10 years, something like that, and then they have to be voted on, renewed actively, or they stop being laws. You could do that in New Hampshire, I think, with just a constitutional amendment, maybe even with a law, and that would not be undoing all of the systems that we've gotten used to in New Hampshire and that people have become attached to, wrongly, but attached to. Solution number 4, I think it's 4, or system number 4 if you want to call it that. Well, this is the one that actually may come within, also like the one before, it may come within striking distance within the next 10 years, and that is just secession, which is really a much less radical concept than people think. It's actually maintaining all the existing systems. The New Hampshire system, the laws don't even change. The Constitution doesn't even change. The structure of the government doesn't even change. Not unless you decide later that it wants to change, but secession wouldn't necessarily change it. This one, I like because it's exciting. People get worked up over it, and at one stroke, it removes really 2/3 of the government that we have to live under in New Hampshire, or maybe 1/3. It depends on how you count it up. But we're instantly released from the 200,000 plus pages of laws at the federal level telling us of what we can't do. And the people that we're dealing with above us are actually people we know, people who are accessible, people whose offices you can walk into, people who haven't built a fort around their Capitol building. But anyway, you guys know what secession is. It's probably not giving you any bright ideas that you didn't already have, so I shouldn't go into much detail on that. System number 5. No, wait, 6. 6, I think. Anyway, this one is also, it's probably more difficult to achieve than secession, but it might have a place in the discussion after secession, should secession occur. That is what I call zero aggression government. And this could, at least theoretically, maintain all of the existing institutions in New Hampshire, all of the existing government institutions, all the existing laws, and all of the existing constitutional framework. Nothing would really change structurally, at least not at first. So you're not creating a new system. It's just a government that is forbidden from taxing people. It must function like United Way functions, or like Walmart functions, or Starbucks. It can get as big as it wants, as long as its interactions are voluntary. So instead of raising money through taxation, they could raise it through a fund drive, kind of like the Spitfire Fund in England in the 1941 era, through making investments, through charging fees for services, which one of the Fish and Game people told me is how they operate. They say they don't really get any tax dollars to speak of. Then you would have an automatic limitation on government in the sense that it can't grow artificially through taxation. It can only grow as big as people want it to be with their wallets. And it would be, I'm pretty sure, dramatically smaller, and this could be disruptive. But it's probably doable somewhere, someday. Again, you want to leave as much stuff, if you're going to be doing it where you live, where there's already a government, you would want to leave as much stuff intact as possible, leave as much of the system intact as possible, without hurting anybody. By that I mean if you leave too much of it intact, then you're harming people, because the system is constantly harming people as it stands right now. But you could leave a lot of it intact under this system 6, I guess I call it. And I guess it could be done with a constitutional amendment or a law in New Hampshire. Certainly it's far within our capability to have such a law proposed. I mean, I could make that happen by myself almost if I wanted to. I just have to make a couple calls to state reps, and there would be some other people that would become involved later, but I could make the difference between it happening and not happening if I wanted to, and anyone could. I'm just limited financially. I can't be dumping $2,000 on every, I can't be dumping $2,000 on a bill. It's complicated, but I have sort of these ethical guidelines that I will not request a bill unless I'm willing to reimburse taxpayers for it, or have somebody reimburse taxpayers for it. That's complicated, and we'll get into that later. But that's the reason I haven't submitted any bills since 2005, and don't intend to submit one. I don't have immediate plans to submit one. Again, I can't submit them myself. I'm not a state rep, but I can. It's easy to ask a state rep to do it for you, and there's usually one that will. System 7, or maybe 8. I think I may inflate, but anyway, this is one I don't understand. I don't know how it would work, but I bet there's a way to do it. And you may have already thought of it. Blockchain governance. Now, I don't know exactly how that would work, but there are people who say that you could use blockchains to do government stuff. And as we see what's happened with Ethereum, there's all this innovation that came out from just sort of having a platform. Well, here's this thing where you can make a smart contract. What do you want to do with it? Well, people had all kinds of ideas, and some of them are governance ideas, but I don't know how any of them work. I just know that a lot of other crypto stuff has worked really well. For instance, like a cryptocurrency that's pegged to the price of gold, or a cryptocurrency that's pegged to the price of the dollar, or a cryptocurrency that you get from making a good prediction and that you lose from making a bad prediction, so on. Things that no one would have ever thought of 10 years ago, they're now commonplace. But there are other things that have been tried and seem to just have failed so many times that you just have to wonder if the idea is the problem rather than the oppressors trying to stop it. And one of these ideas, of course, is the Seastead concept. The Seastead Institute aimed at establishing a country on the ocean with a platform or collection of ships or something along those lines. That's been going on since 2008 or 9, I think, and they really don't have that much to show for it. It's not that they're incompetent or bad or that the idea is just terrible. It certainly was an idea worth pursuing, but so far they have some models, they have some mock-ups, they have tiny boats here and there, tiny platforms that have been tried just to see if they float. There was a couple who attempted to live on a platform just outside the territorial waters of Thailand, and the Thai government had decided to, I guess, prosecute them, and they could be facing the death penalty for not being in Thailand. That's how hostile governments are to this thing. I don't know, they may not still face the death penalty, but I think they escaped somehow. I don't know how all the details are. They got away before they were actually apprehended. And, of course, there was that libertarian venture on an atoll somewhere, and the King of Tonga, I believe, put a crush on that. There was an attempt at establishing an autonomous zone in Honduras. That got shot down because it was native Hondurans didn't like it. Roger Ver has this thing going. I can't remember what it's called. It goes back to 2017. I haven't seen anything come of that yet. Haven't been paying attention. But if anything useful had happened, so I probably would have heard about it. That's an exaggeration. I should put that a different way. If anything really important had come of it so far, then I would have heard of it. There may have been small, useful steps. I would probably miss those. And now there is some guy in, I think, Nevada who's trying to carve out some space for like a crypto city or his own government in his own space or something like that, like our own Fekret Abditch or something. I don't know. But again, he's already coming up against native objections. And by native, in both cases, I mean native tribes, not just people that were born there. Yeah, you don't do well these days in terms of PR going up against native tribes after all they've suffered. Blue Frontiers, I haven't heard a thing from them or about them since 2017. They were an organization that seemed to have, well, they definitely had an organization, and they had a plan and a target location, but what's going on with that? Anything interesting enough for me to hear about it? No. The scary thing, of course, is that this kind of precedent could expand into space, and you just see existing nation states expand into space so that there's never a place you can go that doesn't already have some sort of a malfunctioning system that you can't see what happens while operating without it or with a replacement to it. The lack of a frontier is what has caused much of the human violence that has happened over the last 50 years. I mean, such as it is. There hasn't actually been that much violence on the world in the last 50 years compared to what happened before. It's going down. A lot of things are going right. Again, that's why you don't want to just replace systems while they're in flight. But Lord knows we need a place to experiment with new ideas. Ideas operating without a different type of idea on top of them, skewing the results. So it doesn't have to be like a game of civilization, where all you have to pick from is anarchy, democracy, republic, monarchy, despotism. There are many, many other types of systems. It's just that no one talks about them because no one has allowed them.
What are you arresting this man for?
You've seen the dramatic liberty arrests in Keene, New Hampshire. Now see 111 reasons why you should move there and reinforce these gutsy activists. Keene's advantages are compelling, and the list of reasons to move has just been updated. For details, visit freekeene.com.